Hello everybody, welcome to Hot Seat with Penzola. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're tuning in for the first time, please remember to subscribe, like and comment. If you're not tuning in for the first time, thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Today I'm talking to Saret and Zani, and we're talking about a very, very interesting topic, the pull head down syndrome. I mean, I think we all know that concept or the idea of the puller down syndrome, and it's also well known that women generally don't support each other. Women pull each other down, whilst it's also believed that men generally support each other and wish success on each other. But then again, I really want to unpack the subject. Does it really exist or not? But let's hear what Saret and Zani have to say. Ladies, welcome to Hot Seats with Penzola. Thank you so much for joining me and agreeing to talk about this lovely, interesting topic. I mean, I'm going to start with you, Zani. Tell me about your experience of women and of women either supporting or not supporting each other. You know, what has been your experience?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I know socially, I mean, amongst women, we've always spoken about women not supporting each other, especially when we talk about female bosses. People will say, no, I don't, female bosses are the most difficult bosses to work for.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is there's actually research on this. So I've actually been researching the topic because it's relevant for the work that I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've actually found that it's proven, theoretically proven, or there's theories rather, it's been proven that women struggle to network amongst each other. Women struggle to support and gain what they call social capital amongst each other, whereas men, which is the comparison, seem to be able to do it a lot more naturally.
Yeah.
It's not to say it doesn't happen amongst women, but
yeah.
It certainly is more challenging amongst women. And women are reporting that they find that those women who've succeeded are actually not passing on the baton.
Yeah.
If anything, then they'll make it more difficult for you.
Yeah.
And that's some of the research that I'm finding.
Wow.
Which fascinated me.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I mean, Saret, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I think that we've all certainly seen what you're talking about in our experiences in corporate. But I've also seen the flip side. I have seen teams where women decide together that they want to achieve a specific outcome, and when they have that drive and you have that diversity in a team, it just generates a work ethic which arrives at phenomenal results. And so, I do believe that there's a large part of that which is very much driven by the individuals and what they're trying to, what outcome they're trying to get.
So tell me, I mean, just to add on what you said, Saret, so does this puller down syndrome actually exist? And I mean, by that I mean, is it just a concept that is created to make women look petty, or is it there? Is it a human? Because for me, I think it's a human phenomenon to want to be successful and want to be the best outside of everyone, and so maybe it also exists with men as well. So I don't know.
I think that for us to say it doesn't exist, or that it's just a scenario which was created to make women look petty, is going to mean that the women who are experiencing this in the workplace today, what we're doing is we're saying that their experience is not
good. Okay.
And we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Because what they are experiencing is very, very real. And so for me, I think that are there women who are experiencing this every single day? Being pulled down, not being allowed to be their best in the workplace? Absolutely. But are there men who are experiencing the same thing? I think so.
Yeah.
And so, you used the word human phenomenon, and I do believe that it is very much a human phenomenon.
Yeah.
But there are probably two things which make it more prevalent under women.
Yeah.
The first thing is that we don't have enough women in corporate South Africa, in leadership positions, in management positions. And so as a result, when situations arise where you have that competition, it feels more personal.
For sure.
And the second is that I honestly think women are more likely to talk about these things. So if a man is experiencing the same thing, he's not going to have that conversation as openly. And so because we're willing to have that conversation so openly, we have created this narrative around it. But I also have a problem with the label. Because what we're doing is we're saying women can't work together. Here's the stereotype. If you put women into a room together and they work together, they're going to pull each other.
It's guaranteed that it's not going to be, they're not going to be successful.
And that's not good. That's not good for any of us. You know? So I think it's important to differentiate between like proper pull her down, which I believe is quite isolated, and just healthy competition. And if you're being challenged in the workplace and you have heavy competition, there's an element where you get to decide. Like, am I going to make me be stronger, or am I going to use this as an opportunity to feel like people have confidence?
Zani, anything to add to that?
I know you'll probably ask more about this, but I'm currently coaching women. It's a focus of mine. It's a passion of mine, and I've recognized that the more I do it, the more I have to reach out and do it. It's proving to be necessary to actually create safe spaces for women to talk about what they experience. As recent as this week, a woman was telling her story. This young woman was telling me that her biggest challenge so far has been being ganged up on by other women. As soon as she was shining at work, and she told me the story. This was immediately after she had received an award that wasn't typically, given to women like of her race. And immediately after, the women around her changed and started this kind of so the situation happened, and she was telling me the story, and she said that's what it was. I felt like I was ganged up on, and it was by other women.
Wow.
Similar story, I think somebody else told a similar story, and hers was about people who she led, and she said, I was quite tough as a leader, and I was found that my team actually of women did the same thing. So the stories are many in the women that I am coaching. They tend to tell the story, but I want to agree somewhat with Saret in that perhaps maybe it's not about pulling her down, it's probably not pulling her up, because there are so few women at the top. We know that for years corporates have been trying to change the situation. But what's actually happening is the women at the top are going through their own struggles. And they're finding it very difficult to put themselves in situations where I take the risk to pull Penny up. And Penny might disappoint me. And that has an impact on me and my reputation. And I'm still trying to build it. I'm still trying to make sure that I leave this legacy. And so I think we can't ignore the external factors as much as we're talking about the internal. And I think together that's why this is such a complex topic. It makes it very difficult to just make it about a single or like a single point. You know, there's many variables around it. But you made an interesting point there when you said the woman at that woman at the top, not wanting to take a risk in pulling somebody that might disappoint them, or but in my experience, I've certainly seen a lot of men pulling other men up, and those men mess up, but it's never their fault. So why is it that the woman that's there that feels that if they bring someone up that might fail, it will be their fault? Because we see that happen a lot. And if it's a guy that brought another guy, the fault is of the person that was brought up, and they get dismissed or whatever. But if it's a woman, the blame is not on the person that has failed. It's, we trusted your opinion about this person. Why is that? Why do you think that is? And do men actually contribute to that as well? I think it would be sad to mute conversations around discrimination. Women are still facing discrimination in the workplace. If you look at corporate South Africa, the numbers show you that. The research shows you that. In most companies that would do deep dives into issues of diversity and inclusion will pick up that there's some issues. It's either the sexual harassment conversation, or it's being denied opportunities, or there's some kind of inequity in terms of how we apply policies in the workplace. So if you put all that together and you say, as a woman, I'm facing discrimination, it means the dynamics are going to be different.
Absolutely.
How we respond
Yeah.
to situations,
Yeah.
how we actually examine them. Even now, the way you've analysed
Yeah.
it, you're actually highlighting the differences.
Yeah.
You've already shown that there's
Yeah.
a difference between
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
women and men are treated. And that's why I think when we talk about solutions, I think don't treat discrimination with discrimination. I think if what we need to be doing is involving men as well,
Yeah.
to be able to help us deal with
Yeah.
this, because if you exclude them, I'm not so sure how you can
We,
actually
yeah.
achieve
Yeah.
what we want to.
Well, they're part of the ecosystem, so
Yeah.
we can't do it in isolation.
No,
I totally agree with that.
I just want to
Yeah.
pick up on a point that you just made, Zani. I read an incredibly interesting study recently where a company went out to try and understand why that was happening. Why were women not being promoted as frequently as their male counterparts? And what this organization did was they analyzed all of the emails, all of the meeting transcripts. They put sensors on the managers, like 300 of them, at middle management
Yeah.
and senior management level to see who's in close proximity to you. Because there's also the theory that your networks or,
Yes,
or your
yes, yes.
confidence or your performance
Yeah.
ratings, they got the performance rating data for all of the individuals that they were looking at, and they couldn't get to a data point that said this is why the women are not being promoted with the same amount of
At the same rate.
frequency.
Yes, yeah,
And it
yeah.
was so interesting, and they arrived at it has to be inherent bias.
Wow.
Like they couldn't come up with any other factor.
That is so interesting.
Remember, in conversation with women that
Yeah.
I've been, coaching, is a lot of them have preferences and they value things that don't talk to how promotions happen or how advancement happens in corporate. And that is why we need to start talking about those values and saying, what is wrong with those values? So these women that I've spoken to, they prefer to be more thorough, and they don't want to skip corners. Well, we call it already. I'm already calling it skipping corners.
Yeah.
They want to do things far more detailed. They want to take their time a lot more. They want to dot their, I's and cross their T's. And the theory, the research around it says that because women are doing things a lot differently and they value things, it will put them at a different, the playing.
Because the game is not like that.
The game doesn't.
And the way in which they want to play it is they're at a loss immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I want to ask Saret this. How do you think we define this pull-it-down syndrome from a simple personality clash? How do you?
I mean, you see, what gets triggered for me when you ask me that question is women in their communities don't do this. When you're talking about your friends or the people in your church or your sisters or your families, you would support those people to the end of the earth, even if you had a personality clash with them. So what makes us behave differently in our communities than in our workplace? That's like and that's where we each have a personal accountability to this as well.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself feeling jealous of a woman for getting a specific promotion that you wanted, or you find yourself making snide remarks about a female colleague, or criticizing a female colleague for something you wouldn't criticize a male colleague for, then you have to stop and say, am I contributing to this stereotype? Am I part of the problem here? And I think that's the important thing there. But I mean, personality clash is an important part to this conversation, and there's that piece where you just have to remember that you don't have to like people to work with them. You're there to achieve an outcome, and you should be focused on the outcome and not on whether you like the people or whether you get along with them.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because I guess ultimately it is about us as well, right? So we're having this conversation because we are realizing that this is a thing and it's an issue, and perhaps not an external thing. It's a thing within the women community, and only we can change that. Now, do you think, Zani, the work that, you work for a large corporate, do you think that the work that most of these corporates are doing with diversity and inclusion, and I know there's like big programs that have to do with D&I, and there's women agenda. And I mean, on a presentation, it looks awesome. It looks great. The decks are awesome. And the plans and, and I hear a lot around, the transformation and the targets and the whatnots. Do you think that's working? Does it help drive this?
I'm now looking over 20 years. I've been in corporate South Africa South Africa and a bit of the UK for the past 20 years.
Okay.
There are no shortage. There's no shortage of women leadership development programs.
Oh no, there isn't.
Corporates are doing that.
There
Business
isn't.
schools are offering that. They are coming in huge numbers. And so, as a part of the work that I'm doing now, I've actually analyzed a lot of those programs. What I'm seeing, there is a shift of late. Historically, the programs are, let's put women in business schools and do a program that's targeted at women. But when you look at the content, there's a bit of, they miss the point.
Mm-hmm.
Of late, I'm starting to see programs designed uniquely around this particular issue, where they're starting to talk about women and networking. They're starting to talk to confidence, women and their confidence. So they're starting to go deeper into the woman and her story, her challenges, and they're starting to tailor it a bit more to the individual.
Yeah.
Which is now, I think, where we need to go.
Okay.
So now the move needs to be away from this big classroom, 40 other women in the room. We're all talking past each other, but we identify in a way. But you're still not hitting my sweet spot.
Yeah.
And so the coaching element is now being introduced. It's always been there, but now, as a woman, you've attended however many months or weeks or days of this women's leadership development program. Now I'm going to tailor something for you, and that I can do by offering you a coach. So now you sit one-on-one with the person, you reflect on all the experiences you've had in the program. Let's now incorporate it into your
daily
own
life.
journey and daily life.
Yes.
Okay, you happen to be a woman that's struggling with, I've got to drop the kids off before I go to work, or I'm a single mom, or I'm divorced, or I'm the one that's, the breadwinner. Those are unique issues. You can't lump all of those in one big classroom. But women have those stories. So the coaching then helps to take all of that, make sense
and customize.
of it, and then tailor it to yourself.
Yes.
And it becomes a safe space, as I said earlier. And now what these programs need to start doing is investing more in the one-on-one, and probably making that a much longer experience. And that's money, right?
Yeah.
But so those who really are focused and want to do it, they'll do it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where I think the changes need to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's not been as effective.
Yeah.
I can sit in a classroom with 50 other people and everything can just pass me because I'm thinking, that's not me, that's not me. But when it's one-on-one, it's starting to connect. And that's why I'm thinking, even with the puller Down syndrome, that coaching will tap into that. So Penny, have you mentored anyone? Why haven't you?
Why haven't you done it?
I'm telling you the struggles.
Yes.
The woman can start reflecting on why I'm struggling to mentor, why I'm struggling to sponsor. And that, I think, is what's going to make the difference going forward.
Sure. You're so spot on, Zani. I think, and I mean, I've also attended one of those programs for women. And
I think we all have.
Yeah. And it was a room full of, I think it was about 40 or not even, maybe 30 of us. It was a very small group. Yeah. And I remember, being taught how to network. They spoke about your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have more than 500 connections, what are you doing? The branding, the what. It was great, But I actually last saw those women from the training. Yeah. I have never spoken to any of them. I have not connected. Now, that tells me that didn't work because whilst we did tackle the subject of the inability to connect as women and you would at least assume that that specific group would have taken on that learning and connected with each other. I mean, some of these women, I meet them, it's how's it? Like, I'm not sure whether I know you, I don't know you. But I was in a class where we were discussing the same thing. So I like the fact that you point out the the individuals within the environment, because it's different. You know, we are all different, and I think we all have different responsibilities that affect how we show up in the workplace. And I think coaching is a great tool if done correctly. You know, instead of putting us in a room and you know, rather have. I certainly thrive in a one-on-one type of conversation rather than you know, training. But yeah, I really think that is a spot-on observation. So I want to talk to you about, if you look at organizational structures, you know, for different corporates, you see very few women at the top, and I think we've already covered it. But you see very few women at the top, and yet there's this agenda of driving transformation and whatnot. Do you think that those women have the influence to actually turn the wheel? Because is it fair for us to actually expect just one of them outside of a boardroom full of everybody else? And you know, is it fair for us to expect that from them?
I think I want to pick up on a point that Zani made earlier, which
Okay.
was this can't just be about women helping other women up. It has to be about the men as well.
Yeah.
Right? This is something that we need to address culturally in our organizations. We just spoke about diversity and inclusion and those programs. And that has to become part of our culture. It can't be this thing that we pay lip service to because it looks good on some report somewhere, right? And if you make it part of the culture, then you are going to address some of those things. I also believe that those women in leadership positions do have a responsibility to bring others with them. So I think that frustrates me is when there's that one woman and everybody who reports to her.
Yeah, you know, I was about to say that she's there, but everybody who reports to her is male, and I would assume that she has a direct impact on who reports to her,
Exactly.
right? So she might not be able to change the group in its entirety, but her own team, you know, you should be able to choose.
No, exactly,
Yeah.
and that's critical. And we have to start those. And I loved how you spoke about coaching and that using that as a tool to enable more of these conversations to really bring women into leadership and management positions. You know, mentorship programs do the
Yeah.
same thing. We need more of that. We need more of the women in leadership positions to bring others with them. Because when you do that, we're going to get to a point where we have more scale.
Yeah.
And when you get there, those junior team members who are looking up and have ambition and want to achieve something will see enough people at the top that they won't feel like I'm going to have to compete with
Yes.
just one person to get to that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to, in terms of my current organization, I'm quite fortunate in that we do have quite a few women in leadership positions.
Yeah.
And the conversation is just different.
Yeah.
And it does mean that the junior team members, be they male or female, can look up and say, I can be a leader in this organization.
Exactly.
Because
Because it's
anybody can be a
relatable.
leader.
It's something that it's achievable. It's not something that's out of the ordinary. Yeah. Now, ladies, I want to talk about another point that research, you know, tells us. You know, the salary gap. You know, between women and men, and how do we deal with that? You know, because it's clear, it's very, very clear that women earn way less than men in the same positions. Is it because we're not gutsy enough to demand what we deserve, or is it because there's this assumption? And I must tell you, when I was writing one of my exams, and the case study was about that, and in that case study, they highlighted that the reason they pay women less is because they have husbands that look after them. You know, they don't need. You know, so I don't know. You know, so what is? Yeah. So what are your thoughts, and what are the variables around that salary gap?
I mean, three come to mind. You've named one. I do think learning how to fight for that promotion or get that pay rise. I think there's value and merit in those conversations.
Okay.
We as women have to learn how that game works. You know, it's not going to work sitting in your corner, staying an extra 2 hours in the office.
Yeah.
Or logging in.
Yeah,
extra
at home.
2 hours at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are specific nuances to it, and there are certain things that we have to start doing differently. It's not helping to work an extra 2 hours. and then sit back and say, well, I've done my thing. That worked in high school. Remember high school, you put in the hours, you get the marks. Now you get into the workplace, you're saying, but I've put in the hours for why? Why is she?
Yes.
I always tell the funny story, I always compared to myself to a colleague once. She used to literally get out of her car, watched her once. She didn't have a briefcase, she didn't have a bag, she didn't even have a handbag. She literally just walked gracefully with nothing, not this big bag that's like
that you
carry all
laptop,
the extra books and the laptop and I must read this report from.
Yeah.
She's walking into her office, nothing but her car key.
Done.
You get to her desk, it's absolutely clean. There are no papers and things that she stuck on the wall, but she got the promotion.
Yes.
Right? So I reflect on that a lot. The other thing I reflect on is the whole, you mentioned bias. The people who make the decisions, they may be unconsciously doing these things that I prefer, whatever his name is because he speaks better or said it better. And so I'm going to, advance him more.
Yeah.
That does happen. It's a reality. Whether we like to accept it or not, the discrimination is there.
It's there.
And then the other argument you could bring is that perhaps groups that have recently started participating in these different levels have different experiences, and we need to help accelerate those so that we're starting to be at the same level.
Yeah.
So for me, if you combine all of that, you're starting to see that this is complex, but it has to be facilitated. Whether I'm doing it as an individual or whether the corporates are doing it through what they do for women and all of that, and men coming to the party and acknowledging that actually we're treating people differently based on gender.
Yeah.
And we need to be aware of that and we need to fix that. And I think those types of solutions combined will probably start addressing that for me. That's what I would say.
I fully agree with you, and I think that's all of those points are spot on.
Yeah.
The one that I would add is we need to encourage more women to negotiate their salary when they are getting the job.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of research that shows that women are less inclined to go into that negotiation process.
Yes.
And that's your best opportunity.
Yeah.
And so there's something that prevents us from doing it, and we need to figure out what that is and move beyond that.
Yeah. So in fact, just last week I did a reference for one of the guys that I used to work with, and she was unfortunately affected by COVID and she lost the job. And now she got an interview. She interview went well. Reference was done. She called me and told me that she actually she got the job and they're going to send an offer. And she said something that during the interview, one of the guys that was interviewing her said to her, yeah, well, this position doesn't really offer much or whatever. But the guy said something about, kind of managing the expectation that the increase or whatever the amount might not be what the candidate wants, And I said to her, you've got to demand, wait for them to get the offer, to give you the offer, but demand what you demand. And if they don't give it to you, don't take the job. But it was so tough because she hasn't been working for the last few months. It's COVID and whatever. She's in a desperate position to get the job. But I had to share that with her, as unfair as it sounded. I said to her, I understand that you are desperate for this job, but this is exactly the reason why we end up not being paid what we need to be paid, because you are desperate. And that is the reality. But a man in the same position would demand that this is, and then we went through the points of value. I literally coached her through, highlight the value that that you're going to be adding. Do not be paid by what your previous organization was paying you. You must be paid for a job. This job has a particular budget, and you should then get paid for the job you're going to do. Because there's also that thing of, what did you earn before? What's that got to do with the current job that you're hiring me for? How do we change that in the recruitment industry as a whole as well? Because those are the guys that are insisting on getting your payslip from the previous organization. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, by law, you actually don't have to give the potential employer your old payslip. We don't. But we've gotten so into it that if I don't give them, then they won't give me the job.
But you see, we have to remember that recruitment is difficult. Finding a person that you actually want to appoint in a role is difficult.
It's very,
That is the most
like that opportunity is the one where you're going to have the most opportunity to ask for what
To ask
you
for
want.
the to ask for what
They've
you
gone
want.
through an enormous
Yes.
amount of effort
Exactly.
to decide that you are the person that they want.
Exactly.
Right?
So capitalize on that. But yeah, I mean, I've only ever learned. So if there is one thing I learned from that program, I must say, the women's leadership program I was talking about earlier, that's that one thing. You know, so whilst all the other things like networking didn't work out, but the one thing I took away from that program was do not sell yourself short. You've got to ask for what, and if you're not good enough for them to give you that, then you know, then you walk away. So at least, yeah, that program did give me something. Yeah, ladies, thank you so much. I think there's a lot more we can say around this topic, and we will not solve for it in this discussion on the hot seat with Benzola.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, of
I
course.
have to say this.
Yeah.
I do think we need to look at this, we probably need to flip it and ask, are we all doing enough as women?
Exactly.
So for me, I'm a product of another woman pulling me up.
Yeah.
You know, as much as I can talk about another woman pulling me down, but
Yes,
there
you
is
can
another
also-
woman
who
who's
pulled you
me
up.
And I'm wondering whether we're doing enough of that.
Exactly.
And that's the question I think we need to ask ourselves.
There is some questions around this puller down syndrome, but there's also puller up. So maybe we should focus on the puller up and ask ourselves, are we doing enough as women in pulling other women? You know, so you will be in a situation where you feel like other women are ganging up, but do focus on those that have pulled you up and give someone else an opportunity. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to comment, like, and if you do have questions for both Saret and Zani, please comment on the comment section. I will get them to answer your questions. Thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe. It's been a real thing. Goodbye.